5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Initiate.
The International Airborne Society, a dedicated group of former Special Operations soldiers and paratroopers from around the world. A brotherhood of the Silk, whose mission is to foster international goodwill and understanding by jumping into places many would think foolhardy to even visit. Belarus, Tunisia, Turkey, Serbia, Indonesia, Nepal, Israel, and Slovakia are just some of the hot spots around the world that the Airborne Society operation has jumped in. Every International Airborne Society operation is proof that these veterans aren't looking for just some ordinary drop zone.
Of all the places in the world, only place I'd want to be.
Afghanistan. A country still struggling on its way towards peace and freedom after over 20 years of constant war. Every year, on August 19th, Afghanis celebrate their independence from British rule. At this year's celebration, only the second since the fall of the repressive Taliban regime, a symbolic ceremony was planned in the once dreaded Kabul soccer stadium, where, during the Taliban's reign, public executions of women were performed. At the request of the Afghani government and with the help of Afghani-American Wahidi Nadi, the International Airborne Society was asked to make a military parachute jump into the stadium with General Kartul Muhammad Zai, who is one of only 3 female Afghan generals and the Afghan military's only active-duty paratrooper. Taking to the sky with the International Airborne Society is Raul Correa, former 82nd Airborne Sergeant and author of the novel I Don't Know But I've Been Told. Here he tells Elite Forces Television the blustery tale.
General Kartul Muhammad Zai is one of 3 female generals in the Afghan military. She went into the military after her husband, she was widowed and she had no way to support her infant son. She joined the military. She rose up through the ranks. She became a colonel and in charge of the physical training for the Air Force, and became a paratrooper under the Russians, made like 500 jumps, but after the fall of the Russians, civil war in Afghanistan, and then the Taliban, she was basically forced into doing bead work, and with her parachute behind, beside her, and she had to wear the burqa. And when Hamid Karzai took over, in a big ceremony, a previous Afghan Independence Day ceremony, he promoted her to general. And so she invited us, the International Airborne Society, to come and jump and participate in Afghan Independence Day celebrations.
We're going to be taking off from here, fly over to the stadium. The first pass will be a wind streamer pass. Winds permitting. After that, we will drop the sticks.
We had to get the chutes from a guy in Texas. We had to rent them and then bring them over to Afghanistan with us. The only chutes they had over there, if they had any at all, we heard were some old dusty Russian things that had been in a warehouse for 15 years, and nobody was jumping those. Some of the guys brought their own free fall rigs with them. The jump was supposed to take place in the stadium with military chutes, which are not that steerable. Not like what you see with sport parachuting chutes where they land on a disc. And and you're very susceptible to winds. So we went and looked at the stadium, decided no way. There was an old soccer field, actually 2 soccer fields, with a big piece of cement in the center. And this soccer field is not really a field, it's full of rubble and rocks, but it's in the middle of the city. And somehow, I'll speak for myself, I didn't realize that I was jumping into the middle of a city until I exited the very old Russian helicopter. It's an old Russian M18, completely open in the back, tape hanging all over the place, wires sticking out. One of their 2 functioning aircraft in Afghanistan. It's one of the 2 aircraft that work in their Air Force. That is their Air Force. We knew the winds were going to be high, but we knew we had this helicopter for no more than 2 hours. If we landed, the winds were just going to keep picking up, and there was possible we'd never get this helicopter back. Plus there was the issue of fuel, which we were paying for. We had no window. We had to go. General Kartol jumped in traditional Afghan dress, black motorcycle helmet, and I had heard before that she fears for her life. Just a woman general upsets people in that part of the world. A woman general who has some notoriety for being a paratrooper further upsets some people. She was in the front, in like the co-pilot seat. She was going to free fall with the guys at 4,000. Static line jumpers went out at 1,200. Those are the guys that are hooked up with the military chutes. Free fall guys went up to 4,000. On the way up to 4,000, she just jumps out at about 2,000 feet without telling anybody. Didn't find out why until a Canadian journalist told me that oftentimes in the past, the helicopter pilots try and mess her up. They'll tip the helicopter. So that was the reason she went out at 2,000 feet. She told them 4,000, and rather than give them a chance to mess her up, she just took off at 2. Bernie Hassenbein is in the door of this Russian helicopter, and he gives the signal to us, which is, I think we all knew he was full of shit, but so jump commands are given, stand up, hook up. Afghan colonel who had only made, it was his 3rd jump. It was his 4th jump. He had made 3 jumps 18 years ago. He stuttered, he hesitated a little bit in the door. And a couple of guys in front of me hesitated just a tiny bit, and that kind of got me wondering. And then once I got out, I understood. I haven't been afraid on a jump, and especially not in the not a tailgate of a helicopter. tailgating a helicopter is usually a breeze. I knew something was off. I had my camera out, which everybody told me I shouldn't have, my friend's big Canon. I took one shot here and then one shot down, and when I looked at what I saw through the camera waved, because it was a city. It was houses and buildings and a street. None of these people, including myself on this jump, had ever jumped into the middle of a city before. At that point, I realized just how ludicrous this was. My risers were twisted. Bernie had told me when he did the jump master check that my risers were going to be twisted, so I knew I was going to have to bicycle. So you need bicycle your feet to get untwisted. Pulled on my right riser, got over the drop zone, luckily, and then saw that I was headed right for a goalpost and a soccer goalpost. I figured with my luck, I know how I am. If I just don't mess with it, I'll probably go right through. If I mess with it, I'm gonna hurt myself. So I didn't mess with it, but at that point, it's not like you are coming towards the ground, it's like the ground is coming towards you. So this goalpost is coming towards me. And I hit my head, and then my chute wrapped around the top of the goalpost, and I was sort of getting choked. And I'm hearing the ambulance signs around, and at that point I saw just how many people. There was hundreds, thousands of people circling this drop zone.
Come on! No.
Did you land in the street purposely just to show your Marine machoism?
No.
The rest of the jumpers, one guy, the Afghan colonel hit the top of a building. 70-year-old British guy went down an alley and hit a wall. Another one hit the center of the drop zone where there was a concrete step and broke his femur. And, one guy hit the top of a bus.
That wall, I was gonna hit that wall.
General Carr told the woman was blown completely off the drop zone. Joe, with half a leg and his prosthetics, makes a better landing than anybody else. His landing is absolutely smooth, whereas the rest of us were all over the place and crashing and burning left and right. And Butch landing was without incident. So statistically, at least on this jump, the guys who've lost legs fared far better.
This one goes where?
بنداز سر گردنش بنداز
So there was a little bit of pandemonium on the drop zone. There was ambulances going, and there was these Afghani police, guards, military, trying to keep these kids back, which was a big deal for these kids because most of them, they don't have toys. So to see people drop out of the sky with parachutes was a really big deal. They broke through and started rushing the drop zone and rushing towards all of us, and the police were beating them back with pistol belts, throwing rocks at them. These kids are so gutsy and seemingly impervious to pain because they were just laughing at these guys who were whipping them with these belts. Two guys went to the hospital. One guy was released with after having massive contusions. One guy broke his femur, Monty Marshall, and had to spend, I believe, a week in the hospital in Kabul after an operation, and then they flew a medical jet from Turkey and then had to fly him out. Am I going to keep jumping with these guys? I just got a call from Ed Wright, who told me that there's one trip coming up in Serbia this month, the end of this month. There's a trip planned for Libya, and they're hoping to have Gaddafi pin their wings on. They're just waiting for the visas, passports to be good over there. And he said they're working on a trip to North Korea, so I don't know.
There we go.
Right here, Joe. My cameraman. 4,000 feet, only about 1,200 feet. Yeah, only about 1,200. I wasn't sure the backup would work. It hasn't been very time.